So we often get asked a lot at August why the journey started, about your career. Lots of people know and understand August Recognition and know of us, but they don't know about you and your journey as an entrepreneur. So I think that's where we should start. So I think you need to take everyone back to how your journey started and what that looked like.
Okay. So my journey actually into entrepreneurship started accidentally, as it does for most entrepreneurs, actually. And it wasn't something that I'd ever imagined. In fact, I actually wanted to be an English teacher when I was young. And then I was at school and I was a teenager, and due to a family breakdown at the time, suddenly my life changed unrecognisably. And I went from thinking that I might go to university to be able to become an English teacher to all those opportunities being taken away. And I ended up on my 16th birthday moving into a home for young girls who for whatever reason, no fault of their own, couldn't live with their family anymore, or their family wasn't around. And I actually say, I mean, it was one of the scariest things that's ever happened, but actually one of the best things as well. And I went on a journey from there of real discovery of myself, I suppose, as we all did as we were learning to navigate the world. I continued going to school and had to complete my GCSEs at the time. But I thought, well, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do next. I need to earn some money. How am I going to do this? So I actually started an apprenticeship at a dental surgery, and I became a dental nurse, which is very different to what I do today. But I always say that skill stacking is something that's really important. So no matter what people have done in their lives, there's always something that you can take from it that actually really applies in the next thing that you do, or really makes you unique for the next thing that you do. And at the time, I was working as a dental nurse, and I used to go and study in the evenings to get my qualifications. And the landlord of the house that we were living in with the girls, one day he came to the house and he said, "Right, girls, get in the car. We're going out." And we were like, "Where are we going? This is exciting." He was really nice. So, it was something that he did do things like this sometimes. And he actually took us to a lovely hotel with a beautiful garden. And there was all these peacocks in the garden, and it was amazing. We were sitting having cups of tea and feeling very posh at 16 years old. And he asked us all what it was that we wanted to do next. So we were all young, we were all studying, we all had either an idea or no idea. And I was one of the ones who had no idea. And he said to me, "Donna, you can achieve anything that you want to if you focus and you believe in yourself, and you don't let the boys distract you. You can achieve anything that you want to." And I think that moment for me was the first time I'd ever really heard that. And suddenly I opened my eyes to more of what could have been possible. So I carried on working as a dental nurse. But during that time, it was an interesting period because in the dental world, things changed and regulations changed. And it meant that dentists no longer were allowed to work on their own. They had to have a nurse as a chaperone in the practice or in the surgery with them. And what that meant was that for dental surgeries that only had one or two nurses, as soon as someone was off sick or on holiday or maternity leave, it was really hard for the dentist to be able to operate without their nurse, and they'd be desperately trying to find a nurse to work with them or dragging their receptionist in to the surgery who didn't know what they were doing. And I could really see this gap in the market. And I got bored quite quickly as well of being a dental nurse. It wasn't what I'd set out to be. And as much as I could make it fun, it wasn't where I wanted to be always. And I was more interested in how the practices ran and the business that was going on around them. So I actually started out my own business. I left the practice that I was working in and I started my own little dental nurses agency called DNA, which actually in the dental world, it means you write it on a patient's notes when they did not arrive. So what that meant to me was, has your nurse not arrived? Are they on holiday? Are they off sick? And I took out one of those little red roadmap books, which I'm sure no one uses now, but we've all got Google Maps. We didn't have Google back then. We didn't have mobile phones or anything like that. I had my little old car that was my first car and my little red book. And I literally worked out through the yellow pages where all the dental practices were in Sussex in the UK. And I circled them on the map and I would drive to them And I'd just walk in and say, hello, I'm Donna. I can solve all your dental nurse shortage problems. And I would tell them how much my hourly rate was, etc. So literally within about a month, I think I was booked up for a year. It was incredible. And really what that taught me was it was about understanding the gap. So I could see what was missing and what they needed. And then I was able to grow that and give work to my friends who I trusted as nurses and develop a bit of an agency. So that's kind of where I started. And I think...
How old were you?
I was 19.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Okay.
when I started that. And then after that, I left to have my children, got married, had children, had my 2 daughters, and took a little bit of a break from it. But I was still bored. I get bored quite quickly. And so I started studying all sorts of different things. And then I still had this hankering that I still wanted to study English. It was something I was really passionate about. I'd always wanted to do. So I actually then went back to university. So when my children were 4 and 6, now I look back, I'm not quite sure how I did that. But when they were 4 and 6, I first of all did an access course because I hadn't been able to continue and do my A-levels. And then I went to Sussex University and I studied English language and absolutely loved it. It was fabulous. But that, I guess, is where my real love for English then came alive. And people often ask me if I write fiction, and I'm not a creative writer like that. That's not how I am. I'm very analytical and I love being a linguist. So I like looking at the words and the meanings behind words. And how you say things and communication in all its glory. And so that's what I studied. When I came out of there, I started doing some business writing, reporting and that kind of thing. And I really enjoyed that. And then I sort of fell into the world of awards, working for somebody else, writing award entries. And I did that for a few years. And what I really noticed at that point was the difference that it was making to the entrepreneurs that we were working with, who would come into the process thinking, oh, I just don't really think I'm worthy of awards, but so-and-so said to me that we should get some awards, so let's have a go. And then when you went on that journey with them and we crafted up all their entries and we really communicated their story in a way that others could understand and stood out, which was something that they really struggled to do themselves, when they then went on to win, the difference in their confidence was palpable. And that's what really then made my heart sing and made me think, actually, this is really special. So I can take the skills that I have and the knowledge and the passion that I have for language and communication and pair that with the business knowledge that I had from already previously running a business. And as a lot of mums at the time, because this was pre-pandemic, found it was very, very difficult to work for someone else and look after your children as well. There wasn't really as much working from home. There wasn't that much flexibility. What's normal now was not normal then. So really, you know, for me to still be as hands-on as a mum as I wanted to be as well, my children were still young and at school, the best way for me to do that was with my own business. So I moved on from where I was, and that's when I started August Recognition. And so that's why it probably makes more sense now why the word August is our brand name, is because it's august and it means respected and admired. So it's more about how we want people to feel and where we want to get them when we're working with them. So yeah, that's how it all began.
Amazing. Okay, and then let's talk about from when August started and the transition that's happened in August over the last, 8 years, 9 years?
Yeah, it's 10 years next year.
So let's talk about that. So, you know, the changes that have happened in the business, especially sort of after COVID, and we're obviously bigger than ever and we're growing and everything else. So what's that journey looked like as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so started up August on my own and really hit the ground running and really found that I'd been obviously working with the awards industry for quite a couple of years before that. So I was quite well known amongst awards programs, and they were contacting me and saying, hey, Donna, where have you gone? Great, you're working at August, let's do this. So actually one of the ways that I started growing the business was through partnerships. I really believe in relationships. It's really how I believe anything should work, is about building relationships. And so I started building relationships with awards organisers. And one of the ways that I did that which is nearly a decade ago now, and again is something that wasn't happening at the time, was I said, look, I think actually some of the people who are entering your awards need more help, and there's barriers to them entering. So you know about the ones that are getting their entries in, but you don't know about the ones that aren't getting their entries in and what's stopping them. How about we do a webinar and we get people to come on and we talk to them about all the different things that they need to do, how they're going to communicate to get in their entry across the line and into the judges' hands, what evidence they need to provide, all of that kind of thing. So I started awards webinars with different awards organisers, and it was not being done anywhere before.
Yeah.
And that was brilliant because it was a whole movement in the whole sort of world towards online workshops and things like that. And that really helped me to grow the business because obviously then people would hear us and, you know, want us to support them. So then I started taking on people to work with me and started growing from that way. Then we got to the pandemic and we've been growing every year. And of course, like everybody, I was terrified in the pandemic because I thought, wow, who's going to want to enter awards? You know, is this going to continue? Am I going to have to go and work in Tesco? I don't really know what's going to happen. And at that point, my children one was doing GCSEs and one was doing A-levels. So there was a lot of pressure around it. And I thought, well, actually, me being me, what's everyone else doing? And are they okay? I was worried about people, genuinely, as we all were. It was a terrifying time. So the first thing I did was pick up the phone or send an email to all of the people that I knew in awards and say, are you okay? Is there anything you need? Can we help you in some way?
Yeah.
And what I found very quickly by doing that was that everybody was panicking. Everybody was worried for their job, for their business, for their lives, for their families, for everything. And the last thing, we needed to help each other, like it was the time to come together. And I've always felt that although awards programs are running competitions and they sort of feel like they're in competition with each other, actually they're not, because a great business will enter multiple awards programs, not just one. So I was like, let's bring this together and let's see how we can support everybody. So I started talking to them and saying, well, look, you've got the first part of your process online already, because we'd already moved on as far from originally when I was in awards, when you wrote an award entry, you sent off a Word document on an email, or you even printed and posted it back then.
Wowza.
Yeah, exactly. And they would say, send 6 copies for all the judges. And you'd have to print out all these copies and bind them and send them. We'd moved on from that, fortunately, and 95% of awards were then being submitted through an awards platform. So I said to the awards organisers, look, you've got the platform, you're already set up online, you just need to get the ceremony online. And actually bringing people together right now is what we need. We need community, we need engagement, but there's one thing you need to change, and that is to stop focusing on it being all about the money in business and all about the finance and the growth, because now is not the time to worry about growth. Now is the time to focus on the people. And people has always been where my heart goes to first anyway. So I supported those awards organisers to change their criteria, to look at the categories that they were putting out into the world, and to create their programs that would really celebrate the efforts that these businesses were going to and the people in the businesses were going to look after each other, to look after their customers, to look after their employees. And honestly, as horrific as the pandemic was, for the awards industry, it was awful, it was terrifying. But the change that came out of it was very positive, I think, because the awards industry went on a bit of a journey as well. And now what you'll see is much more compassion, I think, in awards programs, much more focusing on employees and what they're doing for each other, and change making and customer experience, but putting your customers at the heart of everything, which is what one like the UK Customer Experience Awards did. We did a lot of work with them on that. And what was brilliant was at the end of it, they would say to me, well, you helped us put these categories together, so you need to judge them. So I would be judging them. And honestly, I cried my way through that year of judging, because the things that people talked about in those awards, some of them cried too. You know, it was devastating what they were having to cope with, but it was an incredible period of innovation. Because everyone had to think about the pivot, you know, the great word at the time. Was it technology they needed to bring in? How could they keep their people safe? What about hybrid working? Now, some businesses were already set up for hybrid working. They were considered very forward thinking at the time. Fortunately, we were all set up for hybrid working. So we're very much a digital business. So there's huge changes that were going on. But what was also really lovely was we saw other types of organisations then coming in to get recognition. So we had the NHS, we had the fire service, we had supermarkets and the frontliners from supermarkets. So the stories we were hearing were absolutely incredible. And it was such an honour and a privilege to be able to be part of the judging panels that were then presenting them with those awards. So it was quite a change-making time, I guess.
Yeah.
And that went on for a little while, so a couple of years. But amongst that, all of that happening,
all that chaos
and more, I actually joined Daniel Priestley's Key Person of Influence programme. So in 2020, when the pandemic struck, I thought, wow, I need to do something. What am I going to do? I need to work on the business. So I thought, well, actually, I've read all his books. I thought they were brilliant. I've been following the process. Let's join the programme and see what happens. So I joined the KPI programme and I loved it. It was great. It was so nice to have a community of entrepreneurs to talk to. Obviously, everyone was going through their own things at the time. It was hard for Daniel and for Dent because they'd had to take something that was an offline programme and live online.
Yeah.
But it was done brilliantly. So I made an instant community of great entrepreneurs to work with, which was fabulous. And then sort of unbeknown to myself as when I went into it, of course, everyone wanted to get some recognition. So suddenly all these entrepreneurs around us are getting recognition. And Daniel said to me, you know, I love the way that you work with these entrepreneurs. They're all doing absolutely brilliantly. This is such a positive fit for us. Come and join Dent. So I then went on another business transformation journey.
And I guess that was quite an easy decision to make at that time, right?
It was in some respects because obviously it's like every entrepreneur's dream, isn't it? Daniel's fantastic, and all the people at Dent, Mike and Glenn and the whole team are fantastic. It's such a positive energy and a positive atmosphere. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, you can feel quite lonely. You can feel like I'm making all the decisions. Even when you've got team, you don't want to weigh them down with what might be worrying you or burdening you. You might be worrying about where's the next piece of business coming in from, or have I done enough marketing, or whatever that is. So that was the first thing, like having that community was super important. But also, you know, every entrepreneur wants to do that, know that they're doing something right. So to have somebody who you hold in high esteem say to you, we love the way that you work with people, we love what you're doing, come and work with us, was, you know, I was obviously really proud of that. So it was an easy decision in some ways, but then any big decision like that is not easy for an entrepreneur to make, because you think, what if this, what if that, what if
It's like your baby, isn't it?
Exactly,
like, oh, no.
Exactly. They did make me laugh, actually. I haven't told anyone this, but when I was to sign the contract, Daniel sent me a beautiful Mont Blanc pen. And I said, oh, do you think if I'm late for a meeting, they might send me a car?
Yeah, too right.
And yeah, that was it. It was just, honestly, we were moving so quickly and growing so quickly at that time. It was a bit of a whirlwind. But I remember Daniel put out a message on social media about it and said that we'd joined business, but we'd never actually met in real life. We'd only ever met on Zoom because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show to you, just because something like that is happening in the world, you can still do great things.
Absolutely. And then I guess after that, though, and that transition happened, there's still more to the story, because then, like, we've had a lot of conversations which other people wouldn't know about how we were working with sort of a type of client pre-working with Dent, and now we've shifted as well.
Yeah, definitely.
To work with more entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
So at the beginning, so before I was working with Dent as well, we were much more corporate. So worked with a lot of corporate teams on helping them prove they've got the best customer experience, the best employee experience, great place to work, you know, all of those great things. But in my heart, I really wanted to give something back for entrepreneurs as well. And that's where my heart is and my passion is. And it's brilliant. I love working with corporate teams. It's entirely different working with entrepreneurs, because you tend to be taking them on a journey of validation. Whereas with teams, it's more about the validation of the product or the program or whatever's been happening at the business. So by getting involved in the KPI program, I could sort of have a time of discovery of myself of, well, actually, what can we do for entrepreneurs that's a bit different? So that's when I also started to write my book. So Publish is a module of the KPI program. And like every entrepreneur, even though I'm a writer and even though language is my love, when you start writing about things for yourself, it's completely different. So even I had a bit of imposter syndrome around writing the book, but actually I set some time aside, and that's how Win was born on that program as well. And what that meant was that I felt like I had a great gift that I could give entrepreneurs. It was written for entrepreneurs to help them to understand how to raise their profile through recognition and awards. And really takes them on that journey. So I would say since that time, since like 2020, so now in 2025, we work with probably about 50-50 corporate organisations and entrepreneurial organisations. And actually what I love is the sweet spot in between those, which is the entrepreneurial organisations that have grown loads and they're really scaling, and now they're starting to become more into that large level business. It's really exciting to see them go on that journey with awards giving them the drive.
Amazing. Okay, so a question I have, which I know we get asked a lot, is can you give some examples of some real success stories in awards? Because I think lots of people might be a bit skeptical, or they're unsure about what that full journey could look like. Yeah. So it would be really good to understand some stories that you've got.
So I think one of the first things is for anyone coming into awards is to understand what your unique strengths are and really where you stand out. It's quite easy I would say it's hard to read the label when you're sitting inside the jam jar. So we're looking at it from the outside in, and we know what other businesses are going into awards with. So when businesses come to us and say, oh, I want to win an award for this, or I don't know what I want to win an award for, that's where the magic starts, really. And we start analysing and interrogating a little bit and saying, well, actually, what are you doing really well? And I think a really good example of that happened a few years ago now with Close Brothers Retail Finance. So Close Brothers is a merchant bank in the UK, and they had multiple arms to the business doing lots of different things. And they started a retail finance provision. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, and it does sound a bit boring, it's actually really interesting, is where if you want to go into a shop and buy something on 0% interest-free credit, so let's say you want a payment plan to pay over time, so it might be a sofa or a fridge or a large item, then someone needs to give the finance to that retailer in order for them to give you a payment plan. So that's what exactly they were doing. Now, at the time, the organisations that were providing retail finance were quite large, and they tended to provide it to large businesses. Mm-hmm. So for smaller businesses, it wasn't that accessible or available. So when Close Brothers Retail Finance came to me, they said, look, we're small, we've just started. They were a startup, really. We're competing against these large organisations. We need to raise our profile. What can we do with awards? We think that our technology is really good. It's innovative, it's efficient, it's quick. So I said, okay, tell me about your technology. So they said, well, I think it was that they could send the money down the line to the retailer once someone signed on the dotted line for their plan within 4 seconds or something of them signing. So I said, okay, that's great. How's that compare to everybody else? And they said, well, it's quicker. Theirs is more like 8 seconds or something. So I said, right, well, I don't really know why anyone would care about that because isn't that what you're meant to do? So, that's business as usual. What is it that you're doing that's different? What really makes you stand out? And they weren't sure. So I said, well, tell me about your customers. Who are they? And they said, okay, well, let's talk about Nigel. Nigel was a guy who ran a white goods shop based somewhere outside London, I think in Essex or somewhere. And he sells fridges and freezers and washing machines, that kind of thing. And I was like, right, well, how are you helping him? And they said, well, actually, he came to us because what he was finding is that people came into his shop, they pressed all the buttons on the washing machine, they opened the fridges, they had a good play with everything, and they say, okay, great, I want to buy this one, Nigel. Brilliant. Okay, let's go. Oh, can I pay over time? I can't afford to pay for it today. Or I don't want to put it on my credit card. Can I get a 0% interest-free credit deal or something? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't do those. I'm only a small business. And what he was finding was, and we've all done it, people would then get on their phone in his shop, look up the product, they've now tried it out, and they would find it at a big brand, and they'd be able to order it online, 0% interest-free credit, and off they go.
Yeah.
And he was getting to the point that he actually just had enough, and he didn't know how to grow his business. In fact, his business was shrinking because of it. So he contacted Close Brothers Retail Finance. They went out to see him, and they said, we can help you. Now, at the time, there weren't a lot of providers who would help a small business like his. So what they did is they showed him how SEO worked. So to get that information on his website about 0% interest-free credit, put up posters in the windows, taught him how to use the point of sale iPad thing, all of the support around making it happen. His business grew so much, he opened a second shop. It literally doubled. And I said to them, okay, so if you've done that for him, how many other businesses have you done that for? And they said, oh, well, we've actually got about 250 small businesses, I think. So I said, right. So this is where your story is. This is what's going to make people sit up and take notice. Efficiency is great. Technology is great. But what you're doing is you're supporting entrepreneurs to grow. You're saving the Great British High Street.
Yeah.
And what we did then was we told this story in lots of awards programs. And in the awards where you would then go and present to the judges as well, they would take Nigel with them. And he could then talk to the judges about his experience as a representative of those small businesses. We also did a customer impact survey. So we looked at what's the data behind how much everyone's growing. What you find in businesses, particularly startups and small businesses, is they often know what's working one-on-one with each of their clients, but they don't take a measurement across them all.
Right.
So one of the things that we do is we actually develop a customer impact survey so that we know what the data is across them all collectively. Mm-hmm. So on average, how much of all of the businesses you're working with growing, that kind of thing. So by getting the data, we had logical, quantitative evidence by Nigel and his story and other businesses along the way, stories. We had the qualitative evidence as well. So they went into awards programs with this story, and it's just fabulous to see. And I loved it so much seeing them. They would win every program that they went into. One year they won, they called it the double header at the National Business Awards, which is now the Lloyd's British Business Excellence Awards, which was very, very rare. And it made such a difference to their business. Their profile skyrocketed. And then because of that, they started getting noticed much more in the industry, which is what they wanted. And then they actually ended up in a multi-million-pound sale to Klarna, which is one of the biggest payment providers. And Alex, who was the head of Close Brothers Retail Finance, then became the head of Klarna UK. So it was a really good example of a business that was small. It was just setting out. It needed to understand its impact. It needed to understand the difference it was making. It needed to grow its profile, did all of those things. And then there was benefit for the business and for the individuals in the business as well. So I think that's one that I'm super proud of. And we have so many more stories like that I can't tell you who they were with. But it's so brilliant to see. Another really good example just recently has been Kaizen. So that's a small business run by a lovely chap called David Lynham, who actually it's about selling, it helps football clubs to sell tickets. So where you would imagine sort of before the pandemic, particularly small clubs, you would actually go to their box office and buy a hard ticket, take it away. Well, in the pandemic, that needed to change because everyone needed to digitise, of course. David had a platform that he'd already created and was already working well, which he was then able to roll out to these small clubs to help them to digitise, make that transformation. And what was amazing about it was it didn't just help the clubs who were already in operation. It helped them to fundraise because they could sell merchandise through it. They could do charity fundraising through it. It helped people during the pandemic to make donations to them to just keep them going. But what was really important about that business as well is that it's not just about a club being able to sell tickets. It's about the whole economy that's going around that club. You know, towns where there's football clubs in, the whole town benefits from that club. Absolutely. So people go there to stay, to eat, to socialise. It's a community hub for people. So it's so important. But when I first met David, he was very sceptical about awards. He was like, oh, there's no way we can win awards. I don't really know why we would need to and all of this. And I was like, give it a try. I really think you could stand out. And honestly, the journey he has been on the last year has been incredible. He's won 7 out of 7 awards that they've gone for. Absolutely stunning, prestigious awards as well. So he's really punching above his weight and winning. And one of the recent ones was the UK Customer Experience Awards, where he beat ASOS, he beat Halfords. Like, there was amazing businesses in there. And this is a small business that has just a lot of passion behind it. And it's just fantastic to see that. And the boost and the motivation that has given their team to grow. And not just that, the practical help it's given them to grow, because it's made them much more appealing to the larger clubs as well, which of course comes with a lot of growth. So it's given them loads of opportunities, and that's just been a real pleasure to take them on that journey as well.
And they're the nicest guys ever, aren't they? So that helps. Yeah. Helps to work with the lovely ones. Okay, so another question I would have is, like, that's a really good example of 2 very successful journeys. What are some other examples on the other end? And it's not necessarily about people not being successful, but like maybe some real do's or don'ts when it comes to awards, because I think that's where people get confused and they ask that question a lot.
Definitely. I think, well, one don't I would say is don't be the same as everyone else. So sometimes I might be judging a programme, a particular category, and literally every entry in that category pretty much says the same thing, carbon copy. There was one particular entry award I was judging, and it was a financial award, and it was for, I think it was Entrepreneur of the Year or something in there. And I could have taken the names off of every single one and mixed them up, and I still would have thought they were all the same, because you couldn't tell the difference. They were all following the exact same things that they were doing. So what I think a real do is to find your uniqueness and really see how you can make that stand out in an awards programme. However, there's a skill and an art to that, because some people then go completely the other way and actually they're telling a story that they want to tell, but it has no relevance to the criteria of the award, or it's gone off track, which it can easily do halfway through. And as a judge, we're scoring them against a very set criteria, and every award is different on how you score those people or those entries. And so what happens then is they don't win because they don't score enough points, and they think they're terrible and they never want to enter awards again. But all it is that they just didn't quite manage to communicate their business in a way that was going to work with the criteria as well. So it's about understanding the criteria and understanding your unique strengths, and then being able to bring them together in a way that you can substantiate and evidence in multiple different ways.
Amazing. Great advice. You're good at this.
Thanks.
So leading on from that, what advice would you give to businesses that enter awards then are not successful? Like what should they do, or how can they bounce back from that? Like what should they be going away and looking at to improve?
Well, there's a few different ways of looking at that. So first of all, if you enter an award and you don't get into the final, so it's really you've got nowhere in that programme, first of all, ask for feedback. So you might be able to get feedback from the programme. Not all of the awards programmes will give it, but some will. Second of all, I say there's 3 key things that you need to make an entry win. So the first thing you need is logical impact. Okay, so what is the thing that's logical that you're doing for your customers or for your business or your employees, whatever your award's about, award entry is about, that makes sense? Tell us the logical story. But then you need to combine that with the values side of things. So what's your emotional story? Where's the human engagement? Where's the human impact? Because judges are humans too, and actually our feelings drive our behaviour. So if we feel that we really connect with an award entry, it's relatable, like we get it, and you're telling us the human stories, we're much more likely to want to give it more points, because actually we're really connecting with it and getting behind it. It needs to make logical sense as well, though. So you can't be telling a brilliant story, but actually all your sales revenue's going downhill. So it's kind of showing us the, I'm not sure that's working. So it needs to make sense together. And then the important thing is to evidence both of those. So in order to evidence things logically, you need to look at data. So it tends to be quantitative evidence. So it could be your revenue growing, it could be your customer satisfaction scores, it could be your employee engagement scores, it could be an improvement in productivity, it could be a reduction in attrition. There's so many different ways of looking at the data. And making sure that you are collecting data as you go as well. And then on the values and the emotional side of things, you need to look at the human impact. So actually that comes from testimonials, that comes from feedback, reviews, case studies and stories. And when you enter an award with both of those elements, substantiating everything that you've said, you're much more likely to win than if either one is missing. So if you've been entering awards and maybe you just get to the final but you never quite win, I would suggest you go back to those award entries and you analyse them in that way. Well, did I really evidence everything on a quantitative side? And did I evidence it on a qualitative side? Because if you did both, then there's a good chance that you were in a good position to win. However, I will say that I think it's a bit of a myth that some people believe that there's this huge gap between those who win and those who don't.
Yeah.
And actually, it's very often 1 point or very often less than 1 point. And there are some awards programs that actually do a benchmark and give you a report afterwards so you can see what your scores were, which I really love because it's so transparent. But there's so often that I'm judging awards and I might have 60 entries for that category to judge. And there might be 50 of them that I think, do you know what, on a different day of the week, you could have won. But it's just one tiny thing that's making the difference for the winner. So it's not usually a huge gap. So don't walk away from an awards program if you don't win thinking, oh, well, we're terrible. You're probably not. You probably could have been in line for winning as well, but there was just one little thing that's missing. And that's where I talk about the aggregation of marginal gains. So that comes from sport, and in particular, something we know well about in the UK is Team GB and the British cycling. And what they do is they look at every single tiny element that goes around a cyclist's performance. And that goes from what they're eating to what mattress they're sleeping on, to how their bedroom is set up and how comfortable they feel, to the materials of their clothing, to the materials of the bike, every single tiny little thing. And they call that the marginal gains. So if you polish up and tweak on every single thing, you make maybe a little marginal gain here and a little marginal gain there. For them, that's what helps them to win. And you might beat your competitor by a millisecond. That's what it's like in awards as well. Yeah. So for the entries that have had that polish and had the real deep thought put into every single part of their entry and every single part of the evidence, they're going to be much more likely to win than the ones who haven't. And then you've got the ones who knock it together the night before and then wonder why they didn't win. Well, some businesses have been working on this for months. It's a bit like, I always think it's a bit like when you go to school and your exams. Did you really revise hard enough? Yeah. Do you think you could have got an A? Well, actually, have you put the work in? Because I do say you get out what you put in. And I guess for us as an agency, that's what we do. We sleep and breathe awards. Yeah. And when we're working on someone's project, it is all in on that project. So we are giving it so much more effort to communicate across to the judges what it is that business is doing, that possibly we're giving it a lot more effort than they would have even done themselves on it. But we're also not making assumptions. And that is one of the biggest mistakes I see in award entries, is there's assumptions from the writer that the judge will just know something or just understand something. But actually, most judges, unless you're entering a very specific industry award with very specific judges, most judges will be general business people who have volunteered their time to do that judging. They won't have specialist expertise necessarily about what you do. So when you go into a competition making assumptions about what they'll know that's a good score, or they'll know that that's a good service, or they'll know that that's unique in the business. They don't. Yeah. So unless you spell it out to them, you're probably unlikely to win.
And I also wonder how many people know the difference between the fact that every single award is judged in a different way, right? Yeah. So I think sometimes if people have put a submission together last minute on a Saturday night in a panic, thrown it in, not won, and then gone, oh, all awards are pointless, and walked away from it. There's over how many awards are out there?
5,000.
5,000 awards, and they are all different. They're all judged different. Yeah. The processes are different. Yeah. So, I just think that's a really interesting point that as a judge, sometimes you said like you're deliberating together and other times you don't even see the other judges'
every
scores.
Single competition has a different process. And so there's a few things that happen there. The first thing is, before we start writing an award entry for anybody, we understand what the process is and we understand how they're going to judge that award entry. So if you understand how it's going to be judged, you're much more likely to fit into that criteria. if you're making assumptions about how it's going to be judged, then you're less likely to understand how to score points. So that's kind of point number one. Find out how it's being judged. Very often it tells you on their awards website, if you take the time to look. It will tell you in their FAQs. You can even contact them. They're very friendly awards people. Yeah. If you ask them, what are they looking for? Is this kind of project the kind of thing that would fit well into this kind of criteria? Sometimes they'll help you choose a category. So, take advantage and do your due diligence around it so that you know. But a lot of they just differ so much. I mean, in a day, if I think of what the team's doing, they could be doing a 500-word, which is document-only entry for this particular award. But for this particular award, they need 2,000 words, a PowerPoint presentation. They're going to have an interview and they're going to have a site visit. So, it's completely different kettle of fish. One award might be going up against others in their industry, whereas the next award's going up against others in different industries. So what they're judging is going to be different on that side of it as well. It's absolutely different for every competition. So when you try and take one entry that you did for one award and stick it into another award, it's not going to work. Square peg, round hole. But that happens all the time. And then people don't win. And then they go, oh, it's all a fix.
I'm not doing awards.
I'm not doing it again. What a waste of money. But actually, no, you just needed to really understand what you were doing and communicate your project in a way that was going to fit the criteria. Think about it as an exam, okay? Read the question first and reread it afterwards. Is what you've answered actually what they're asking? Yeah. So someone said that to me once, actually. They said, gosh, did you ever think you'd run a business where you're basically just doing exams every day?
There it is.
Like, yeah, it is like that, actually. Weirdly, we enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not a writer. I'd be rubbish.
Well, that's why we only have expert writers in our team, and that's why they are all trained with my training program, because it's not an accident that they know what they're doing. It's absolutely being trained for the performance. So all of our writers have previously worked in journalism at very high level newspapers, or they've written books, or they're absolutely expert writers. They know exactly what they're looking for. But as well as that, we train them in a way that's very exclusive to us. No other agency trains like this. Is a completely unique awards training program, the Awards Accelerator, which we actually kindly then let other people come and train to do as well.
So true. And I guess a lot of people, so when I'm taking the initial calls, will say things like, well, we've sort of worked with a PR agency or a marketing agency before. And I feel like a conversation that comes up a lot is, what is an awards agency, weirdly, because we are very niche. And why can't I just use what's the difference?
Absolutely. People say that to me all the time. They go, wow, I just never knew an agency like this existed. I'm like, I know. Okay, the difference is we're subject matter experts. So we have partners in marketing and in PR and in media who can support on that side, and they are subject matter experts. But what we do is eat, sleep and breathe awards. So everything we do is awards. I judge a huge amount of awards programs so that we always know what's going on in the industry, what the awards programs are looking for, what the criteria changes every year. There's different trends in awards. What you would win for 3 years ago, you won't win for now. You need to understand what's going on, what else is being entered. So we have a very broad view of all of the different industries and all of the different types of entries that they're putting in, and the types of evidence that they're using, what people are measuring now, what a good score on something is now compared to what it was a few years ago, all of those different trends. So I think it's that, of course, there'll always be different people doing award entries and people do their own, but that's why we like to train them, is so that they know exactly what they're doing in the first place. It is a very niche part of PR and marketing, I'd say. But when you specialise in something and that's all you do all the time, you will know more about it than anyone else.
Absolutely. We are like part of the marketing picture, but we're not the whole thing, right?
Exactly.
We're a piece of that.
But what's really nice is it supports all of those elements as well. So actually having an awards strategy built into your marketing strategy is really useful, and your PR, because you can then be shouting about it on social media at the right times. You can make sure that your profiles everywhere look right when the judges are looking at them, because we will go and look you up. You can make sure that you get great media around it. And when you're winning really prestigious awards as well, that can really make a difference. And you can even then use that media in your next award entries, which is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks for clearing that up. That's a question we get a lot. Another one that I've got more and more recently is that businesses always have a different goal when they first work with us. But a big topic at the moment is like, we want to be the most award winning.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like a fiery line at the moment. And I feel like people want to know how that can happen. And they almost believe or perceive when we have this conversation that that's too ambitious to even think about it. Yeah. So how do you navigate that? And can companies be the most award winning?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a valuable badge for your business, and there's lots and lots of businesses that are utilising that and have seen the power of it. So it's definitely becoming more popular. Somewhere that I think you see it a lot is on TV and radio adverts. So the most award-winning bed, the most award-winning whatever. It's super powerful because it reassures consumers in one small sentence. So immediately you think, oh, well, they must be good. So, but you've got to keep that up as well. So, you're giving yourself a task, but it's a great task to get to because once you're there. So it's really about understanding, well, what else is going on in our industry? Is it competitive with awards or not? What's really interesting is it's probably not as competitive to get to that place as you think. So you might be thinking, oh, well, what do I do? I'm a florist or something. Could I be the most award-winning florist in this town, in this region, in this county, in this country? So it doesn't have to be in the world. It can be within something. Or could it be that you're the most award-winning business for this particular thing, for innovation or for customer experience or something like that? So I always say, think about what reputation it is that you want to create, because you should be in control of that reputation, not just everybody else. And think about how awards can help you get to that with the reputation, because you are who Google says you are. So if Google says that you're winning loads of awards for your customer experience and actually you provide great customer service, and when I'm thinking, oh, I need to change my broadband provider, I don't know, they all seem to charge more or less the same in my area. It's just like a price war. So how am I going to differentiate? What's important to me? I don't want to sit on the phone for ages if I have a problem. Will they come out? Will my broadband speed be quick enough? All of those problems that I might think might happen. Well, if I then go and look at the different providers, and there might be 4 or 5 that I'm picking between, or if I see one's got loads of awards for their customer service, I'm going to think, oh, that's a comfort. Well, I know that if I have a problem, they're not going to leave me on hold for 3 hours, or they're not going to leave me without any connection for 2 days. So that will reassure me, and that pulls the buying trigger. And today they say there's research recently that showed that 85% of consumers now want to see reviews and awards before they will actually press the button on buying. And that's because, like a decade ago, probably even more than that, we started seeing reviews become really, really important. And we all read reviews, and Amazon was like where it started really. And we were like, right, well, that person said it's brilliant, then therefore it is brilliant. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. One of the first reviews I ever wrote was for Debenhams, and it was a coat that I'd bought, and I was studying English at the time, and I wrote this review saying how brilliant this coat was. It was true to size, it fit perfectly, and I described it in lots of different ways. Anyway, I got a phone call from Debenhams. This is how unusual it was back then for people to actually write a decent review. And they sent me a £25 voucher to say thank you for my review, because it had triggered more sales of that product. I was absolutely astounded. And do you know what I did? I went on, because of that, I then started studying reviews, and I became obsessed with reading reviews and looking at the structure, the format, and my linguist head kicked in and what language was being used. And I actually went and did my dissertation on the difference in reviews across different classes and different types of retailer, and ended with what the actual structure of a review should be in order to drive sales. And I got a first class for that, so that was brilliant. But anyway, I digress. But back in that day, so what I'm saying is that reviews were super important. They are super important still now, but we don't necessarily believe them, and that's the difference. So customers' perspectives have changed. So we now go, oh, is that a real review, or is that their competitor giving them a 1 star? Have they paid for those reviews? They look false to me. Why are they all saying the same thing? They've been told what to say. So our trust for reviews actually went downhill. So then what helps? Okay, well, if you've got some third-party credible awards on your website or on your platforms that you're showing these, okay, well, actually, if you've got that award and you've got great reviews, I believe it now.
Absolutely.
And that's just the way that marketing has changed over the years and the way we've got used to things as human beings. And then we want more. We want more trust, and we want more credibility, and we want it to be proved more before we spend our money. And one of the things that we saw at the pandemic was a lot of large organisations and brands that we've known and loved for years crashing that we didn't expect to. And it taught us then that nothing was safe. You thought that working for a big company was a safe thing, and it suddenly wasn't. You thought that buying your holiday from a big company was a safe thing. Suddenly it wasn't. So what we had to do, and maybe it just kind of evolved, we didn't even know that this was a movement that was happening at the time, was we had to put more and more and more out there into the world as businesses to show people they could trust us. More case studies, more reviews, more testimonials, more awards. Yeah. So we've really seen that change things over time. And I think that has driven awards and recognition to be something that's so much more important now for businesses in this day and age.
Absolutely. And I definitely think that the whole, we want to be the most award-winning thing is only going to get more bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And also it's not luck. No. Like it's a strategic decision to make that happen from the get-go.
But also you need to be doing good things. So if you're thinking, well, I've got this dodgy little business and I'm just sort of bashing things along, you're probably not going to be ticking all the right boxes to be in that zone. It is the businesses that are doing everything right. And then if you look holistically across the business, so it's not just about one thing in the business, but actually if you look across the business, they look after their customers brilliantly. They look after their employees brilliantly. They're a great place to work. They have really keen values that you know about and that show through their products and services. They stand up for something. They believe in something. They're different. They've got a USP that's different to their competitors maybe. So there's lots of different things that you can look at your business. And it might be that you look at your business and you go, oh, actually, yeah, we're doing that. We're pretty sustainable and we're really ethical and our employees love us. We know we're getting growing. Great feedback from that. We're growing. Oh, actually, that could be for me. So I sort of say, well, go look in the business. What's working? What isn't working? You might need to fix some things first. But, what is working? Because that really could be for you.
Yeah, for sure. What do you feel really proud of within your career?
Okay. One of the things I feel proudest of is growing a team who are absolute champions. And I'm not just saying that because you're here, Brooke.
Get that in.
But genuinely, I get a lot back from seeing others progress. This work that we do, no one's ever come into this having done it before. So you come in and you learn so much and it crosses over lots of different elements as well. And so I'm really proud of how everyone else has come on and helped and supported the business to grow as much as we have. That's one of my proudest things. Another thing that I'm super proud of is the clients that come to us. Whether they're a small business or a mighty business that is huge and a global corporate, it makes me really proud that they choose us to work with and that we are in a privileged position of being able to support their business to go on and win these awards. So I'm super proud of those.
So what do you feel the future of awards looks like? Are there any trends that business owners should be aware of? Where do you think this industry is sort of heading?
Okay. So awards are growing all the time. There's more and more awards programs. So for the industry itself is getting bigger and bigger. We're seeing more niche industries develop their own awards programs because maybe they get to a point where they're like, we would like some recognition, but actually there's nothing suitable for us out there. So there's more niche programs starting as well, which is nice to see. But for trends for people to enter, well, AI is now huge. So that's coming quickly into awards and we're seeing much more AI and data being recognised and initiatives around that and technology, which we would expect. But I would say most things in the world, awards are about a year behind because we can only recognise things that have already happened. We can't recognise you for what you might do in the future. We need to be able to see the proof of it. So that's why now in this year, 2025, AI is something that's going to be a big part of awards. And I can see that only getting bigger for businesses. I also think because AI is making business easier as well, we're going to see more entrepreneurial businesses sprouting out of that as well. So a few years ago, and particularly around the pandemic, we saw a bit of an entrepreneur revolution. So lots of people who'd either worked in corporate and decided this is enough for me, and thought much more about their lifestyle, started entrepreneurial businesses and took that leap, and many who got made redundant and had no choice and took that leap. So we've got many more entrepreneur awards as well as a result out of that. We've also got more entrepreneurial categories within larger awards that you might have thought were traditionally corporate.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of innovation and a lot around sustainability as well. So it's not just about being a great business that makes a great profit and looking after your people, but what impact are you having on the world as well? And what difference are you making there? So I think there's a lot of kind of whatever's trending in the world at the time, you can expect to see that in awards next year. So if you're jumping on the AI bandwagon now, then start thinking about how you could get recognition from that to stand out, because there's going to be a huge amount of businesses that are doing that and that could stand out in that way.
Amazing. Last question. What would your sort of one piece of advice be to a business owner or a company that really wants to be award worthy? Like,
yeah,
what can they be doing?
Measure it. If you can't measure it, you don't know if it's real. So I always say to people, have you asked your customers what they think about that? And then sometimes the entrepreneurial business are like, oh, no, that's a bit scary. I say, well, how do you know you're doing it right, or it's what they want then? So measure everything as you go, measure on the way in, set what your base levels are going to be. If you're training and developing people, well, take a measurement of where are they at now. If you're just growing your business, where are you at now? And then measure everything that goes along, because then you'll get the impact of it coming out the other side. So always think, for everything that you do, how would I prove that if I had to prove it? Have I got a testimonial about it? Have I got a case study about it? Have I got some data that will help me to prove that? And then when you can bring that evidence together, that's going to give you the most chance of winning. So start by measuring it. And at the end, you'll have the data that you need and the stories that you need to actually prove it and win.